oh, I forget what was first icon. Yeah, documentation was first icon, and prop 110 the second item. But since Geoff Huston, who is one of the author of prop 110, needs to leave in the middle of this session, so we decide to switch these two items. So we'll do prop 110 as the first item in this session. And as you know, Andy Linton, Policy Chair, expressed a conflict of interest of Prop 110. So I will handle this proposal as acting chair. And third one is, yes, yes. Somebody need to watch and share comment on Jabber, actually not Jabber, on chat room. Then in this meeting, we appointed George Michelson as that role. Then fourth one is that yes, microphone position. Even though we are repeating this point, we are trying new mic position. So please do not flip mic direction. Okay, so
I'm sorry.
so am I. And also do not dance. Okay.
Gonna say.
Okay, let's start. So first item is a prop 110, and also is Dean Pemberton and Geoff Huston. Then it proposes designating 1.2.3.0/24 as Anycast to support DNS infrastructure. So can you present your proposal? No.
Thank you very much. So yes, so the title of this proposal is a proposal to designate 1.2.3.0/24 as Anycast to support DNS infrastructure. A little bit of background and the problem statement. So Network 1/8 was allocated to APNIC by the IANA on the 19th of January 2010 in line with standard practice. APNIC's resource quality testing conducted by APNIC R&D found that certain blocks within Network 1 attracted significant amounts of unwanted traffic, primarily due to its unauthorized use as private address space. So what that means is it's not really fair to allocate this out to unsuspecting members as usable address space just because it attracts so much stuff. You know, people have been configuring this on routers as defaults for years and years and years. That research showed that we are talking on average 140 megabits to 160 megabits of unsolicited traffic and bursts of over 800 megabits a second. For some networks that would be an unsustainable amount. So the analysis highlighted individual addresses within this range, such as 1234, and it's covering 24, remain in APNIC quarantine, and it's believed that they will never be suitable for normal address distribution. So as the research has carried on, it might have been hoped that this level of traffic would decrease over time, eventually get below a threshold, and then these addresses would be allocatable. That has not been the case. This proposal proposes the use of 1.2.3.0/24, therefore 1.2.3.4, in the context of locally scoped infrastructure to support DNS resolvers. What's the objective of the policy change? So the objective of the proposal is to permit the use of 1.2.3.0/24 as an Anycast address to be used in the context of scoped routing to support the deployment of DNS resolvers. It's noted that as long as providers who use this address use basic route scope limitations, the side effect of large volumes of unsolicited incoming traffic would be, to some extent, mitigated down to manageable levels. The situation in other regions, well, improper use of this address space is a global problem. However, we got given it, right? So this is really APNIC's problem to decide what they want to do with anything within 1/8. So there's no other RIR that has equivalent policy because it's not really their problem to solve. So what's the proposed solution? Well, this proposal recommends that the APNIC community agree to assign 1.2.3.0 to the APNIC Secretariat for use in the context of locally scoped infrastructure support for DNS resolvers. At some future point, there is nothing restricting an RFC being written to include this prefix into the special purpose IPv4 registry. However, at this time, it's considered sufficient for the APNIC community to designate this prefix to be managed as a common Anycast address for locally scoped infrastructure support for DNS resolvers. There's some advantages. It'll make use of this otherwise unusable address space. There is no way that this address space ever gets allocated out to a member for general use. We just can't see a time when the amount of traffic would allow that to happen. This proposal would allow this address space to actually be used. DNS operators will have an easy to remember address that they can use to communicate with their users. For example, configure 1.2.3.4 as your DNS resolver. That would be an advantage. It would be useful. What are the disadvantages? Well, the address attracts a large volume of unsolicited incoming traffic, and leakage of an Anycast advertisement outside of the limited local scope may impact on the integrity of DNS service located at the point associated with the scope leakage. Some operators with high capacity infrastructure may see this as a negligible issue. The impact on APNIC. Although the space will no longer be available for use by a single APNIC NIR holder, the proposal would result in the benefit for all APNIC community members as well as communities in other regions. That's the proposal as it stands. Questions?
So, any comment or question?
A very quick comment from Sanjeev Gupta on the chat is that Wei Yin Tei's presentation earlier in the routing track used 1.2.3.0/24 as an example on slideware.
Yeah, and that clearly shows that that this prefix has been used in an arbitrary fashion since the beginning of time, and therefore isn't able to be reasonably allocated out under the normal allocation system. So this would be a useful way of getting some use out of that address space. So thank you for the comment.
Tomo Yoshida from JPNAP. I'm sorry, I just catch up with your proposal, so I didn't see the mailing list discussion. But I think, I'm sorry, I don't want this idea because when APNIC and I held an experimental announcement of 1/8. So at that time, I advertised the 1/8 at the time. So we know that 1, 2, 3, 4 is very dirty, as well as the 36, 37, 38, 39. Like, so even if we use the locally, so we need to handle the inside the customer's traffic coming from the 1, 2, 3 to this time to the 1, 2, 3, 4, and also how do we need to handle accidentally advertise the 1, 2, 3 /24 to the globally. So I don't know your ideas.
So this is Geoff here, and let me tag team with Dean and respond in some ways. This is a dirty prefix, and we're not saying that even if you use it locally, you're going to reach the folk who want to reach you. There are no guarantees or assurances in this particular address. It has been used in Wi-Fi access points. It has been used by vendors in all kinds of ways. It's dirty. But just because vendors squat on an address, does that give them eternal rights of use because they've seized it? What if I use equipment that uses your address and make 1 million units? Does that then give me that address? Squatting doesn't confer rights of any sort. So in some ways what we're saying is with this address is The fact that it's commonly used by a number of vendors does not pass that address to those vendors by default. They never applied for it. It's never been allocated to them. A group of folk have approached APNIC and said, maybe you should consider allowing it to be used. And our response was, it was in quarantine for a very, very good reason. And they said, and Dean is a co-proposer for a fine reason, we would like to use this in a DNS infrastructure project. We have heard of that use. And I'm going, you know, buyer beware and all that. If you're looking at non-exclusive use inside contained environments and you're willing to admit it's not going to work brilliantly, that's your foot and you can shoot it off if you want. I can't give any undertakings and you can't and none of the rest of us can. So that's where it sits. If you're concerned about going, well, I might want to use it, my advice to you would be, well, it's pretty dirty. Are you really sure? Because it's your problem. No guarantees, no undertakings about cleanliness. Absolutely.
I can understand your point, but I think it's a policy to the community. So,
Well, no, it's not. When the Secretariat gets these kinds of requests, as a Secretariat, we kind of feel, I could make a call, but is that the right thing? So I'm really consulting the community with a proposal to say, help me here. I'd like to do this, but I'm seeking your consensus to do it. And if you go, no, Geoff, keep it in quarantine, I'll go, fine, that's a fine direction, and that's where we go. But that's the reason why it's here. So I'm not creating a huge raft of policy. I'm trying to get community input on a specific question about what to do with this prefix.
I have a basic question. How many of you would like to use this prefix?
I can't divulge anything other than I have been approached, and this policy proposal is in response to a specific approach. And again, this is community, and the answer was, well, I'm not going to give it to a specific end entity. The proposal is non-exclusive use. And if you're going to use it non-exclusively, you better scope your advertisement, because otherwise, again, bad things will happen, but it's your call. So no, I can't tell you whom. Unfortunately, I just can't.
But you propose the policies because that someone would like to want to use this prefix. So that's why you...
We have been approached. We can't tell you how many or when.
Yeah,
there have been
because
approaches over the period of the past 12 months. And this is my dilemma, that I do not feel that I have the power or the capability to do it unilaterally, right? We just put it in quarantine. And we said, why? Some folk are going, I want it out of quarantine. And we're going, I'm not sure that's in the scope of what we do. Community, give me some guidance here. Here is a proposal. Tell me if you think this is the right thing to do. Okay?
I can understand, but I don't agree with this proposal.
I think Geoff has an NDA as APRICOT.
That's precisely why I can't tell you whom, when, and how.
So you cannot
but Dean isn't up here by accident.
So I am speaking for Sanjeev Gupta from the Adobe Connect, and he has 2 points. One is he wanted to ask, if I am using this under the proposal, do I need to inform APNIC I'm using it inside my network? So that's his first question.
We have thought about this a lot, and there are such things as letters of authority for routing, and some upstreams and transits like to see that the person who controls that address explicitly allows an AS to use it and advertise it. So do you need to ask us? Well, all the people who use 123 today don't ask us. And in the strict sense, no, you don't. But there are often routing practices to try and use this in sort of legitimate circumstances where your neighbours, in terms of exchanges, peers, whatever, wish to see a letter of authority. And if you want that kind of letter from APNIC, then this kind of letter of authority would come out were this proposal to be accepted, that we would be saying, well, this AS has come along and said we'd like to use it, and we will go, we record the fact that this AS has said they would like to use it. It is non-exclusive. It is non-exclusive, so yes.
And actually, that brings up a good point, and one of the reasons that I think bringing this proposal to the membership is so important. I think, you know, I think that idea of non-exclusivity is really important here. I think the worst thing that could happen for this kind of address would be for APNIC to give it exclusively to one or a number of companies. I think that would be terrible. I think if the address like this is to be used for this sort of infrastructure, it should be able to be used by anyone who wants to use it, whether they be a small provider in a small part of the world or whether they be a multinational with a huge reach. You know, so bringing the proposal to the community, asking the community what they think the APNIC Secretariat should do with requests that they get to be able to have access to this prefix, I think it's the right thing to do. This is for you guys to make the decision, not the Secretariat. That's the reason for the proposal.
So,
Just excuse me, the co-proposer doesn't exactly agree with everything Dean said, because in the role of the Secretariat, the opinions of large and small, I have no opinion of. So just for the record here, you know, it's not that we agree on motivations and reasons here, but the end result is a proposal.
So Sanjeev has a second point. He thinks that he could foresee other Anycast applicable uses of the prefix under the same basis, such as address point 53 for DNS, address point 123 for NTP. So he suggests wordsmithing to say that it's proposing the use of the prefix in the context of locally scoped infrastructure support and remove the restriction for DNS only.
Thank you for that suggestion. At this particular point, we're coming to this community and as a Secretariat member reflecting an original proposal. And I must admit, the more general issue of seeking the community's general views about what to do with this address is actually not on the table. Here is a particular proposal. I can certainly bear that in mind, but in exactly the same grounds, if you want to use it and put other UDP resources behind you, I'm not the police. APNIC doesn't enforce anything. We can't take it away. Once it's out there as Anycast, I freely observe that what UDP ports you put behind it is up to you. So there's no enforcement function whatsoever. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Kenny Huang, Executive Council member of APNIC. My question is probably not direct to your proposal. My question is, for the spatial use of the application, does it require any other consultation from other technology communities, such as IETF, perhaps you know much better than most of us? So I don't know.
Speaking as the co-author of one of the original RFCs that created the special purpose IANA registry, I have some familiarity with the IETF side of that. It is certainly the case that certain Anycast addresses have been reserved and placed in that registry because of protocol requirements. And the Anycast address used in 6.4, for example, is a very particular example of that. But in so saying, I also observe that the use of Anycast, in fact, the definition of Anycast, is not solely a prerogative of the IETF. You might have noticed that one large organisation uses 8.8.8.8 in an Anycast context. It does not appear in an IANA special purpose registry. So the ability for APNIC to say, this address is assigned into the APNIC labs, for example, and is able to be accessed and used by folk on a non-exclusive Anycast basis, is certainly within our abilities to do so. And as Dean pointed out in the policy proposal, if someone at some point wants to write an RFC and push it through the IETF process and recast it into the IANA Special Purpose Registry, there is an IETF process to do that. And the outcome may or may not happen. But at this particular point, this is something that we, this community, can do, and the IETF does not necessarily have to be involved. It is not their exclusive prerogative to bless and address as Anycast. Never was, never will be.
Okay, just try to clarify the boundary between ITF and I.
And I hope my answer has clarified that.
Curtis Lindquist, I'm going to run back on you now. Curtis Lindquist on that note, I unfortunately missed the start of the presentation, although I missed the entire presentation because I was in another meeting. But I would precondition this on having a document, be it an RFC or a technical document or anything, actually outlining how to operate this. Because I think just giving the address space and saying, guys, good luck, has the risk of creating more problems than you're solving.
An operational note, I think, would be a helpful hint to operators saying, don't just use this and assume. And I think it's actually a wise and sagacious piece of advice.
Following up a discussion we had yesterday,
Are you volunteering?
I got both my hands in my pockets. And, following a discussion yesterday, I would be a little bit more strict than a hint. I would have a much stronger worded document saying that if you're going to go and do this, this is the only way you're allowed to use it.
Unfortunately, I'm not sure is allowed is available language. I would actually couch it in the terms of best operating practices that we know. But again, since you appear to be authoring this document, I'm sure we can get something together on this. Thank you.
Is there, okay, Gaurav, go ahead.
Hi, this is Gaurav Upadhyay from Limelight Networks. Given the amount of discussion we had on this document on the mailing list, I fully support it as it is written right now. And that does not mean it's written in stone. There is always scope for modification later on. And we as a community can do that. So I think at this point, I support it as it is written, this version. Thanks.
Okay, is there any other comment? Sorry, Sanjeev is writing something in chat room, so maybe I need to wait. Oh, David Woodgate is also typing something.
I can do another dance if people want.
Well, they can just type faster.
Maybe.
No, you can go. Yeah. Okay, so if there is no further comment, I would like to ask your opinion. And as we did in morning session, you have 5 options. First one is a strongly support, and second one is support, and third one is neutral, and fourth is oppose, and fifth is strongly opposed, as shown here right now. Okay, then Prop 110 is proposing designating 1.2.3.0/24 as Anycast to support DNS infrastructure. Okay, so if you strongly support this proposal, please raise your hand now. Okay, if you support this proposal, please raise your hand now. Can you show a little higher? Yeah, okay, now it's good. Okay, so if you are neutral for this proposal, please raise your hand now. Okay. If you oppose to this proposal, please raise your hand now. Okay. If you strongly oppose to this proposal, please raise your hand. Okay. I think Tomwell already expressed why you oppose to this proposal, but I'm not sure the other people who oppose to this proposal have expressed their reason. So if you can you express the reason why you opposed to this proposal? I saw 5 or 6 opposed people for this proposal.
Hi, I'm Toshio Tachibana from Personal Capacity. So I oppose this proposal because specific /24 block is a shared block in the APNIC community. So if I don't use I don't want to use specific /24 for the around the world in the not only the APNIC community, but also the another region communities. So but I understand for the this prefix the dirty, but my understanding is this is shared resources for the our community, not using for the specific usage.
The proposal as written makes no restrictions on whom may say to APNIC, please give us an LOA to use it. It'll be any AS the proposal does not restrict that, you're correct.
Is there any other reason opposed to this proposal? To support. Okay, so
It's up to you, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
I know.
That's not me. Wow.
You have
Okay,
a
so
fine, there is one hand up there.
Oh, after that, go ahead.
Hi, Aftab Siddiqui. If you recheck the mailing list, I was one of the opposer quite strongly, and today I'm supporting it. We had a discussion internally and with a couple of guys. As Gaurav said, we are not setting something on the stone, and this is quite an operational issue. And we can try this one, and if this doesn't work, we can come back as a community and change something. So this is something which should be tried. That's why I'm supporting it. So those who are opposing it should consider it. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me point out too, we don't feel that we can allocate this prefix under a normal unicast allocation. We've never specifically allocated specific addresses to anybody, and if we feel that an address is unallocatable to absolutely anybody, it has remained in what we call quarantine. We have 3 of those prefixes and 2 policy proposals to create a long-term solution. The other 2, 1110 and 1000, are the subject of another policy proposal that we'll discuss this afternoon. But as I said, if we don't get consensus on this one, it's going to stay in quarantine because we are not in a position to do a general unicast allocation because there's a very tight qualification on the usability of that prefix, and it will remain in quarantine until we find some other policy-based proposal to understand its disposition.
Narayan in Pune. Just a point of clarification, the way I read it, you will not force this address space upon anyone. It will only be for those who specifically request it, and it will only be used for the specific.
Let me, I suppose, qualify.
But what I'm saying is that you're not saying let's take this dirty address space and force it out into the public. It will only be for those who specifically request it.
And the caveat is it's a limited scope. I mean, you would be wise to use limited scope routing, otherwise you will attract a lot of traffic that you didn't want. And secondly, you will encounter a number of noisy routing advertisements in a local context anyway. It won't work that way. And so Curtis's operational note that he's going to write will describe this in great precision because that's really true. The issue is right now that folk do use that address, and that's largely why it's so dirty.
This is Gaurav from Limelight Networks once again. I think Geoff just said what I came here to say is it's actually already in use. You know, we've seen this in the wild, people use it internally. I mean, even like some vendors configure 1.2.3.4 as their default device addresses all the time. So in that sense, by not having a policy, we are saying it's fine to do that, or we're not doing anything about it, right? At least with this, people who feel wrong about using this as an experiment within the network will just have something to say, no, it's okay to use it something internally. And you know, it can always be changed, but I'm not seeing this address space ever being assigned to anyone for production use, right? So either we keep this in the APNIC research forever, right? Or we just accept and say, yeah, people are using it, we're not going to do anything about it. There's nothing we can do about it. At least this gives us a way of, if somebody's using it in the wild, they can let Geoff know, APNIC research know, that, hey, we're using this, this is what we did. And as Sanjay pointed out earlier, this could be open for use for NTP, DNS, whatever, within internal network. And maybe even vendors might start configuring it on their devices. So in that sense, I think I'm strongly supporting this mainly because we want people to do it and come back to us, not do it and just avoid coming back to us, right? And of course, Curtis will write a big note about all of this. And, you know.
I think he's got a draft already. I saw him swiping on his laptop.
Go ahead.
I just want to point out to just say one more thing. It's also, of course, the moment this comes out, it's going to be used by operators all around the world, not just in Asia Pac.
Yes, that was the response to a previous question from, yeah.
Okay, is there any other comment? Since some discussion was happened after asking consensus, so I would like to ask consensus one more time. Is it okay? Okay, so if you strongly support this proposal, please raise your hand now. Okay. If you support this proposal, please raise your hand now. Okay, got it. If you are neutral for this proposal, please raise your hand now. Okay, got it. If you oppose to this proposal, please raise your hand now. Okay. David, are you raising your hand? No, I'm kidding. If you strongly oppose to this proposal, please raise your hand now.
Okay, you might want to check online.
Yeah. Okay, got it. Okay, this policy proposal has been discussed on the APNIC policy SIG mailing list and also at today's open policy meeting. And the APNIC PDP requires the community to reach consensus or a general agreement on the proposal before it can proceed. I have noted the community's comments for and against adoption of this proposal. On consideration of these inputs, I believe that the community has reached a consensus on this proposal. So next step is the next step in the PDP is to take this proposal to the AMN and seek a continued consensus there. The proposal will then be posted back to the mailing list for a 4-week comment period, and if required, that period will be extended up to 8 weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, Andy, come back. So next item is the policy documentation, policy documentation, right?
Hello everyone, I'm Adam Gosling, APRICOT Secretariat. This is policy documentation presentation. I promise you my presentations get more exciting as we get through the day. Some of this is a bit of an ongoing theme. So there's 4 things on my agenda: new versions of the policy documents, confederation documents, handling of dead links, and the single policy document. So this is a consultation as much as anything. I don't want to really spend any time on this, but I just kind of thought for the record I would note that we went through an editorial comment period on those 4 documents just recently at the beginning of this year. That has finished, but as I mentioned in my last presentation, only one of those has actually been published. The others are waiting for the actual implementation of the policy, even though I've got the documents ready. So that's kind of all self-explanatory. Some people may not realise the actual policy documents at APRICOT are not the ones you see on the website. They're actually living on our FTP server. And well, to be honest, it's a little bit of a mess in there. And I came across some documents that were still marked active in the APRICOT docs folder on that FTP server. And they were draft confederation documents, and they were marked active, and I'm not quite sure why, but they'd never been obsoleted. So I quickly obsoleted them and hid them in the drafts folder. We thought we'd better just tell you that we'd done that. I don't think it's really very exciting, but just for the record, those documents have been properly obsoleted. This one's a little bit more tricky. The web guy was running a link checker on the site, and it threw up a whole lot of broken links. And this kind of explains it. So there was a broken link in the parent page, which is a policy discussions prop 14 version 01, had a link in it to the link at the top, and that link is off-site and we have no control over it. And he said, what are we going to do with it? The page doesn't exist anymore. And I said, I'm busy, I can't think about that right now. And then a couple of days later he said, oh, I've linked it, I've swapped out the link to the page on Internet Archive. And I went, okay. Now, this raises a bit of a question. That document, the parent page as it's listed here, is kind of part of our transparency archive. And I wonder, and I'm kind of looking for a sense if anyone wants to give me one, of whether it's more important that that document remains unchanged in the archive for the rest of history, or whether it actually works and that someone that goes and wants to read the archive can actually get to a document that might be similar to the one that it was originally intended to link to. And if no one comes to the mic, I'll think about it, maybe talk to Sanjaya, and we'll come up with a solution ourselves. So I guess I'm asking, is the archive sacrosanct, or should the archive be functional? Any takers? You have to be a special kind of person to care about this sort of stuff. Okay, moving straight along. Just for the record, that's where the documents are. I want to get those links in. This one is a project that I've been working on kind of slowly for a couple of years now. And I want to take all of our documents and make it into one kind of policy manual, and those are the reasons. There's quite a lot of maintenance overhead, which in this day and age seems to be a little bit of a waste of time. But I also think it might be actually a bit more useful for people. It'll be easier to access. It can be taken as one PDF, one document, and also it'll remove a lot of duplication and also kind of make it a more coherent set of policies. At the moment, there's slight changes between a definition in one document and a definition in another one. And I know legal counsel kind of thought it was a good idea as well. And it also, I feel, not that I couldn't do it now, but providing a change log, I think is something that would be pretty cool, and it would certainly be useful for me, because people will say, when did we stop doing that? Or when did we start doing that? And I actually have to physically go through all of the individual text archive documents and say, is the change made, is the change made? So a change log would be great for me, and I guess anyone doing any analysis of the policy process in the APRICOT community. So those are kind of my reasons. And that's what it looked like when I started the process. This is kind of what I was faced with when I took on the role of documenting the policy. And a lot of the content in these is the same. It's the kind of goals and aspirations and principles of the policy environment. And so I thought, well, this is repetitive and there's no point in it. I should do this. And we'll take all of that duplicate stuff and I'll have 4 policy documents. And it seemed like a great idea, so I talked to the community and I started doing it. And that's what it looks like. And I've actually made it worse, right? Instead of having 6 policies, I've now got 7. And that environment policy at the moment, which has all our goals and aspirations and such, is duplicated in the V6 policy and in the ASN policy, less so in the others. And so I've kind of made it worse, and by the time I got to this point, I thought, actually, that's not a very good idea. What I need to do is move to this. And I've shown this slide a couple of times, and people who aren't very interested in policy documentation must be getting sick of seeing it. So anyway, last meeting I did a draft of this, and it's a big document. It's a little bit less than 14,000 words, and I posted it to the mailing list. I put it on our server, and nobody read it. Well, no one at first, and then one staff member sat down to read it and got about halfway through and went, nah, it's kind of not working for me. And this is the reason I kind of made an error of judgment in drafting that policy manual, should we call it. I kind of got to the section where we actually start talking about handing stuff out, and I thought, well, we should talk about initial criteria first, and then talk about subsequent criteria next, and then talk about criteria for assignments. And it kind of gets really messy, because in the IPv4 space, we actually don't make any distinction between allocation and assignment. So even that is not balanced. And so when you're looking at the document, I thought, well, no, if I don't have space, I want initial criteria. All I want to do is go and look at that. And I think that the experience of using the document, this actually became quite confused, because I'm swapping between the resource backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. So it was suggested to me that I should perhaps learn from the experience and come back to the community and admit the error of my ways, and to see whether there might be another way to do it. And maybe even to go back, sorry, there's a lot of clicks there, to go back to this idea even. So I put, for those of you that follow the mailing list, I put a number of options up. And I put 4 options up. And then a couple of people commented on them, and I kind of had a brainwave, and it's like really obvious. I don't know why I didn't think of it the first time I stuck all those documents together. And that is to actually still have one document, but to find a halfway point between imitating what we've got now and just kind of jumping them all together. And so this is my option 5, which I put to the mailing list a week or so ago, and got quite good response to. And like, unless someone mugs me in the corridor, this is what I'm going to do when I get back to the office. And that's to have one big document, because a lot of people agree that this is a very good idea to keep all of these in one place. It's about how you structure it. And have a section there, which is the policy environment. It includes the scope and the definitions and the goals and principles, the procedures, and maybe whack a couple of other things in there, historical resources and experimental allocations, which is kind of not so, not something that we use as policy, kind of unused policy. And then just hit IPv4 policy. How do you get addresses in v4? And that's so initial and subsequent delegations and transfers, and then just tackle IPv6 with the same stuff. Just and put the transfer section in here because it's about getting addresses, and then do the same for ASN, and then I have to have the HD ratio table tacked on the end there. Although I did think, does that really need to be part of the policy document? I guess there's no harm in it. So unless anyone kind of leaps to the microphone now, I'm going to go away and rejig my document and follow a similar process that I proposed last time, because there's no real rush to get this done, right? How to proceed. This is within the scope of the editorial policy, and so I don't think that I kind of need any formal documentation to allow me to do this. But it's a significant change, so I want to give people time to read the 14,000 words if they're so inclined. So I propose to put it on the mailing list and publish it on the website for 2 months for people to read it, and then actually go to an editorial comment period, which is the formal part of the process. The 2 months is just for people to kind of schedule that into their workflow if they really want to do it. And in the process, sorry, this is kind of unrelated, we started talking about publishing the document because the editorial policy states that the official version of the policy is the text version, and that's the version that's on the FTP. And so that's kind of a must-have. I must have that, but no one wants to use that, right? And so we publish it as HTML. And we publish some documents as PDF because without doing kind of complex ASCII art, which you might find in the text version, it's kind of a little bit ugly. So we have an ability within the existing editorial policy to publish stuff in PDF, just so we can have graphics and such. But I'm thinking we'll publish it in these, and someone said, can we have Microsoft Word documents? And I went, yeah, sure. And then people kind of chimed in and said, I don't believe that you're using Microsoft Word for this. It should be XML. It's an open standard, and for all the other reasons, it's more efficient. And so, again, I'm going to author these in XML. I figure we've talked internally about maybe seeing if we can get the editorial policy changed to say the canonical version is XML. I guess it's not really necessary. If I can just use if it's authored in XML, I can just save it in text and publish that as the official version. The authoring is kind of background work. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Adam, for that. Has anybody any comments or thoughts or ideas on this? Or are you just happy for Adam to proceed as he's proposed? Perhaps nodding or some indication that this is okay? Yeah, yeah.
My thanks to the people who did take the time on the mailing list as well. I appreciate it's not particularly exciting stuff, but it is important nonetheless.
Yeah, actually, we got more than 10 comments about this point. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much.
That's great. Thanks very much, Adam, for the work on that. Now, again, we are running ahead of time, but I don't want to start taking the next proposal, which is Prop 109, until this afternoon. So you get another early finish, and let's be back here sort of on the dot at 2, and we can carry on with this. Thank you.